Welcome, future Mountaineers. My name is Thomas, and today we're going to be talking about who are hall staff on our on campus housing. Like I said, my name is Thomas. I work in Coltrane Hall, and I'm a graduate student here at Appalachian. And I've worked for the university for a few years now, and I'm really excited to share with you what we do here on campus.
Hello, future Mountaineers. My name is Crystal Harvey. I'm a residence life coordinator in university housing. I've worked here for 2 years, and I specifically oversee the halls of Belk, Newland, and Justice Halls. So, as Thomas mentioned, we are going to talk about hall staff and their significance in your residential experience. So, we've created a short video just to show you and introduce the concept of our hall staff here and also give you a sneak peek into some of our halls and service desk resources on campus. So let's get started. When you first arrive on campus to your residence hall, when you enter the building, you'll notice that our doors are locked. And that's because we have a swipe system to access the building. So the only students that can access our buildings are students that reside here, that are true residents. So you don't have to worry about random people coming in and out of the building. So you're gonna use your app card like this and swipe to get into the building. And once you enter the building, you'll notice that you have a lot of lobby space, a lot of community space, but one area that is super important is the front desk. So most front desks look similar to this, and you will notice that resident assistants sit at this desk from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. And they are there to help you with any questions you may have, any maybe facility issues you have in your room. They're just a constant resource throughout the night. You can find them here. And once those RAs leave at 11 p.m., you'll notice night assistants take over. And those staff members, like the name, work throughout the night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. to work with the resident assistant to ensure the safety and security of the building. Another staff member that's super important to know is your hall supervisor. And often your hall supervisor's office is located inside the building, very similar to this hall office right here. So this hall supervisor's office is located inside of the building, right at the end of this hallway. Some of your hall supervisors' offices will be located in the e-service desk, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
So when you get to your residence hall floor, you're going to notice a few unique things. Most importantly, your room. So in your assigned room number will be your room, and you'll get your key on move-in day. Another unique thing is your floor will have a social or study space for you. And so that could be right when you get off the elevator, or it could be tucked in at the end of the hallways. It just depends on your building. But something that's consistent in every building is your resident assistant, or your RA, as we call them. So here you can see an RA room. What's most important for you to notice in this video is this resident assistant sign. It's the same in every building, so you know exactly what room and what floor the resident assistants are on. In most buildings, there's an RA on every single floor. But in other buildings, there could be multiple RAs on the floor, just because of the layout of that building. An example of this could be Thunder Hill Hall, whereas we're in Frank Hall right now, where there's one. So you can see on the door, there's plenty of door decks. It really signifies who lives here. So an example of some of the work that an RA does is they do a lot of programming, they serve on duty, and they are a resource for residents. The primary job of an RA, contrary to like what you see on television, is they are there to support you. They're not there to get you in trouble. While that is an element of their job, it is not the primary reason we have RAs. And so an RA is an undergraduate student staff member who is taking classes just like you. They're in the exact same position. They just have this additional role, which they receive roughly 2 weeks of training plus ongoing training throughout the year to do. So an RA will do a program on your floor, for example, once or twice a month that you'll be asked to attend. They will do one-on-one intentional conversations with you every semester or twice a semester, and that serves as like a check-in and like a guide, which gives you an opportunity to kind of get to know your RA and like ask them questions that you wouldn't normally ask, or you just want to ask in passing. Another thing that RAs do, which I mentioned earlier, was duty. And so there is a building-specific duty phone number that you can always call. And so in every building, there's that phone number we posted on the main entrance, any side entrances and exits, and also around the floors. And so you can call that number anytime 24/7. But the RAs specifically will answer it between 5 p.m. on a weekday and to 8 a.m. the next weekday. So what that means is on the weekend, it's 24/7 RAs. But during the day, during a weekday or a workday, it'll go to our housing office and someone there will help you with your question. But for the most part, the RAs will be the ones fielding your questions. So if you're noticing that you're having an issue with your room, it could be a facility issue, it could be an issue with your roommate, it could be just an issue with maybe you adjusting to being on campus, or maybe you are taking classes that you've never taken before and you want to know how to get help. Your RA serves as a resource that accesses campus support for you. And so while the RA is not a counselor or a tutor, they can get you to someone that can do those things. And so that is a really important thing, and it's a really great thing that we have them here on campus for us.
Earlier, I mentioned service desk, and here we are at the East Campus Service Desk. There's one on each respective side of campus. So East Campus, like the one we're at, and there's one on the west side of campus. And depending on which hall do you live in, you'll know which one you need to be going to for keys and packages. So let's go on inside and talk more about the service desk. So this is the inside of the East Campus Service Desk. The main desk that you'll be interacting with is this desk here, where you will interact with a desk assistant. So desk assistant's main responsibilities are keys and packages, as I mentioned earlier. If you're locked out of your room, you'll come to this service desk and receive a spare key that you can use to get in and out of your room. If you have locked yourself out of your room after hours, so like after 11:30 p.m. when the service desk is closed, you'll call that duty phone number that Thomas mentioned earlier, where you'll receive the RA on duty and they will let you into your room. If you've lost your key permanently, this is where you will request a lock change and you'll receive brand new keys. And of course, the fee comes with that. So make sure you're holding on to your keys throughout the school year. So let's go over to the printing station. This is where you will come over and use your app card and your Express account to print out anything that you may need for school, clubs, and organizations. So that's another great resource here at the service desk. I mentioned packages earlier, and those will also come to the service desk if you have anything shipped from UPS and FedEx. So you can pick those up here too. When I talked about hall supervisors earlier, I mentioned that some of the offices would be located in the service desk. And here we are in front of some of the hall supervisors' offices here. They're often referred to as coordinators. I'm a coordinator, and we have some offices of our fellow coordinators here in the East Service Desk. If you need to make an appointment to speak to them or just want to pop in to say hello, they'll be the ones that will help you out. Wow, Thomas, that video turned out really awesome. I'm so glad that we could talk about hall staff and show some of our great spaces on campus in relation to university housing. I noticed you talked a lot about the resident assistants, and you're a hall supervisor yourself. Do you want to talk about some of the great work that you've done this year with your resident assistants and as a hall supervisor?
Yeah. So when I was on campus my first year, we talked about programming a lot. And I thought programming was like a computer thing, and I did not know that it meant like these are events on campus. So for those of you who may not have been exposed or maybe are first gen, that's what it means. And so I really enjoy this part of the job. And so there's two kinds of programs that we have in our halls and two kinds of events. One's social, which kind of describes itself, but then one's educational, which is really important too. And those educational programs we have in the residence hall are based on what we call our residential learning plan. And so the residential learning plan is just, it's a guide for how on-campus living looks. And so in that, we have a lot of different events that happen in buildings, and there's a lot of discretion for what your hall needs. So there's wellness and prevention services that can be a partner with us. Counseling, health services, university police can come and talk about self-defense. There's a lot of really interesting programs. My favorite educational program was definitely our counseling center coming in. I think that they did a really great job talking about their services, and they just did an introduction. But it was really well attended because a lot of people were interested in that service. But for our social event, for our building-wide opening, so I work in Coltrane, like I said, and so we have a connector lobby, which is fairly large. And so we did a party in the connector, and we had like all the RAs were there. We had music, we had pizza, there was dancing, we had video games, and it was a lot of fun. And we ended up with like almost 200 people coming. So it
Wow.
was a lot of fun. And so programming in the residence hall is a lot of fun. So attending the events in your building is definitely a great way to one get to know other people, but to get to know your hall staff too. And in that event, we also had like so my supervisor Zach Birch is a coordinator here, and so you mentioned a little bit about coordinators in the service desk, Crystal. Like, can you tell us more about what they do?
Yeah, so yeah, Zach is a coordinator. I'm a coordinator. Like mentioned, I've been a coordinator here for almost 2 years, and it's been a great experience. So, coordinators, we have a unique um, position here because we directly supervise a building. So, we get to work one on one with RAs and residents inside of our building. And we are also master's level professionals. So, we have that master's degree that allows us to be able to really cater to the needs of students and have that kind of a counseling, student affairs, student development background, which is great to put into practice. And so, in addition to working with RAs, we also supervise grads like you. So, we have an area in which we oversee. So, we work with RAs and graduate assistants that are supervising their own building. So, we get to wear a lot of hats, really get to interact a lot with students,
Oh
interact with a
yeah.
lot of hall staff, honestly. And so, it's a great role and a great position to be in and be able to impact the lives of students. So, I've loved it.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. So we also mentioned a little bit about night assistants, and our night assistant program is super unique to Appalachian State. Can you talk about just what you love about our night assistant program and how it's beneficial to the student experience?
Hmm. Well, I think like one of the best things is that so the RAs get to, work for from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the desk in their building. And so earlier I mentioned about that building specific duty phone number. You can always call that number at any time. And I mentioned that and I'm mentioning it again because it is so important. That one phone number unlocks housing for on campus housing for you. And so you call that number at any time, somebody will pick it up. And so the RAs hold that phone and they also sit at the desk. So they do both at the same time. And from 8 to 11, and then at 11, the night assistants come in. So night assistants do not live in the building where they work. They live in a different building on campus. Sometimes they're off campus. And so that we have a lot of students that do this kind of work, kind of if you're like a night owl, and their primary job really is focused around safety and security. Whereas RAs kind of have, they wear a lot of hats like you, Crystal. They have a lot of education, safety, policy, things like that. But night assistants are primarily focused on the safety and security of the hall. So they'll sit at that desk from 11 to 2. And then, they'll kind of, you'll kind of get to know who they are because you'll pretty much have like a night assistant staff that comes in through your building. Um, but they do rounds of the building every hour to make sure that the exterior doors are shut, to make sure that people are following policies, to make sure that the lights are working in the bathrooms and things like that. Like just making sure that things are kind of going as they should. And I think what's really great about them, especially here, is that they're well trained and they can help you with a lockout, which is a really important thing because the last thing you want is to come back to your room at 1 a.m. You find out your roommate went home for the weekend, they locked the door on their way out, your key's still on the desk. You could just go downstairs and ask the night assistant, hey, can you let me in? Because as we mentioned earlier, when it came to the service desks, they close at 11:30. So after that time, that they're your access. They can help you out with that. And they're also just students just like you. So as with the RAs, they are undergraduate students as well. They understand that. And a lot of them are really willing to like chat about what it is they do or what it is that they want to do with their life, with their major. So they're a really great resource for students in our hall, in addition to their primary role. But I think that, you know, in terms of our hall staff, that really wraps it up, Crystal. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think there's anything else that people need to know?
No, I think we did a great job of covering everything. I think there's a lot of leadership opportunities in university housing for students. So students come to campus and they enjoy the residential experience. This shows that we have a lot of student staff employees and students can really engage in a lot of these opportunities and work for university housing was you and me.
That's right, and there's something else I also really wanna plug too, like, our work environment is we're a really inclusive work environment, and so we really value, like, students that come from every walk of life. So I mentioned earlier about being first gen, so I'm a first gen college student, and I started in this line of work. And so, you all can get involved no matter your background, interview with us, when you're here on campus. We want you to work for us. And so if you feel that calling that to help others, that this is a really great role, and we're really open to people from all different kinds of backgrounds, and identities, and that's really what makes us a well-developed department, and what makes us most able to serve students.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you for joining us today and diving into the topic of hall staff within university housing. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the main housing email address on the housing website, and we hope to see you on campus in August.
See you soon.